Alright, so I've got a new deck. Well, it's kind of an old deck, but it's a new build. And right here at this loss is where I believe I switched the build to the current mode. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the deck list, and then we will run through, I think that's 12 games of Magic. And here is the deck list. It's Edric. Edric, like a little bit different from how I used to play him before. I'm going to scroll down so you can see all the lands on the left side there, and scroll back up. So a little bit previously, I think I had a few more of the combo-esque cards in here. Wirewood, Hive Master, Wirewood, Symbiote, Quirion Ranger. Those cards are out. Instead, what I have is a lot more mana than most Edric decks run, alternate mana sources, and the ever amazing Mishra's Workshop. The idea here being that I wanted to build a deck that could take advantage of both Mishra's Workshop and Gaea's Cradle in the same deck and do it effectively. I think this is the deck, and I think that means this has got to be one of the best decks because being able to abuse those two cards is exceptional. So there's too much to go through in terms of in terms of the overall package of the deck. I think it'll be easier just to play some games and take a look and see how things play out. So we'll go ahead and do that. Oh, there's my son. So let's get back here. I'm going to start at Missile Monkey here after the loss, and hopefully these games will be the same. But if they're not, I'll point out when I think if I see a card that's not in the current build. But I'm pretty sure that it was a loss that prompted me to switch to the big mana version, and from there it's been very easy to do quite well. So this is against Narset. So obviously if his commander gets down, Edric's certainly got a problem because there's very few cards that can sweep the board in this deck, and I don't really have a fast hand, but I have lots of mana, and my opponent has Soul Ring and then Crawl Space. So lucky for me, he's not playing anything too amazing. Of course, that could slow me down, but even if I'm only drawing 2 cards per turn with attacking creatures, I think that's fine. So I go ahead and take a risk, and I get Dryad Arbor since he didn't have red. He plays Fire Shrieker. So this doesn't look too serious here. I'm going to go ahead and get Edric down. I would have played Lantern, except I've got Cradle in my hand, and so I'm able to go ahead and start drawing some cards here. I actually only attack with Edric, thinking that I was going to just draw 1, and then I would be able to kind of hide on Cryptic Command, but my opponent is Path to Exile, so I get to draw none. But I do get to search for a island, which is nice. So we'll go ahead and get that. And then I just do nothing. So with the Flooded Grove, I'm able to actually cast Cryptic Command. So even though normally I would like to play Glenelendra, it's a creature, Narset, that I'm afraid of, not the spells necessarily. So I'm just chilling out on a counterspell. And he plays Teferi Moat. The nice thing about this build of Edric is that I am far less concerned with creature hosers than I am with winning the game the way that we've been winning in Commander for a very long time now. I want to generate lots of mana, stifle my opponent's mana development, and I want to draw extra cards. But drawing extra cards when I'm already, sitting with a fat hand is far less important. So this time I do have an opportunity here to go ahead and play the Lantern, still have Cryptic up, which is excellent, and I do Fabricate, so I was thinking, I could Fabricate for, the standard targets, Soul Ring and Mana Crypt. But you can also, interestingly, Fabricate for Map, which for Gaea's Cradle, although that clearly makes no sense here. But what I was thinking with this Fabricate is that I would have a much better target later, so we'll see what that is if it comes up. I do not recall, and if it doesn't come up, I will mention it in a bit. And my opponent hits his red and goes for Ponder, but he has no blue now. So he just tries to disenchant my Lantern, and I think about whether or not that actually matters, and it turns out it doesn't. It's not going to affect anything in my hand, so I don't really have to have the Lantern there. Fortunately, I do draw Coalition Relic, so I'm able to play Deranged Hermit directly into Karn Liberated. And I sit on the relic, but I sit on it with the comfort of knowing that if something goes wrong here, I'll be able to generate Oh, I'm sorry. Let's back up. Yes, the card that I was thinking I would give it Fabricate was indeed Winter Orb. So I play, let's back up. I was planning to play into Karn. I thought about playing into Karn. That isn't actually the play I made. I played Deranged Tournament, and then I pumped the Gaia's Cradle Mantle into Flooded Grove so that I could get extra blue. And then I used some of my mana to cast Fabricate, some of my mana to cast Coalition Relic, which was again, that was a good top deck, and then I use Coalition Relic and the 1 mana that's left over to play Winter Orb. Figuring that next turn I can optionally pay upkeep on this guy with just a tap of a Gaia's Cradle, or I could choose not to, 1, and then that would leave me with 5 mana off of this and 6 off of this. So not quite enough for Karn, so I figure I'll pay upkeep once, and then on the next turn I can Karn him. The only way this is bad is if I top deck the land here. And then, what was it that convinced me to do it? Oh, I realized that if I didn't make that play, I could actually pay for Glenelendra and have an extra mana next turn thanks to Gaia's Cradle anyway, and I'd be better off with a Glenelendra here than a Deranged Hermit. Now, of course, with the Fairies mode, I can't attack with these green creatures. With Crawl Space, I could have only attacked with 2 of them theoretically anyway, and that's all fine with me. So my opponent kills Winter Orb, which is sad days for him, actually, indeed. So I go ahead and play Boreal Druid since it costs effectively 0, thanks to Gaia's Cradle. And for 7 mana, I play Karn. I eat his moat and just get in there for 2 with 2 creatures because of Crawl Space. But that's okay because I now have Karn and I've got 2 counter spells. Didn't need to play Edric, not when I could. I mean, I suppose 1, 2, 3. I could have played him there, but with this board position, I can actually cast a Cryptic, and I can also activate Glen, so I can win a counter war 100%. And since I'm destined to win the game here, as long as my opponent doesn't play uncounterable. There's very few that I can think of that would actually matter, but maybe other than that, I think I win because I have an active Karn and everything else is going on. So it's better to not get greedy, and have played Edric there. I'd rather just sit on counter Glen. And so my opponent goes for Narset. Of course, I'm going to counter that and bounce Crawl Space. So I take a chance here. Well, because of the way his mana works out, I go ahead and bounce the Crawl Space instead of drawing a card. And what that'll let me do is it'll let me plus up Karn next turn. Notice he's only got 2 cards in hand. So if he played land Crawl Space, I just Glenelendra it. And if it's not, if it's what am I trying to say? If he doesn't play a card, which is what I expected, and ends his turn, I charge this, untap everything. I Karn away one of the cards in his hand. If he doesn't throw away the Crawl Space, that's fine because Glenelendra will take it down. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and cast Edric here, and I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a whole bunch of cards. I'm going to draw up to 7 cards. 3, what is that? 7? Yeah. So draw 7, exile a card from my opponent's hand. He's got 1 card left. Handwriting's on the wall, and he scoops it up. Not a super tough or challenging player there, or at least as far as his defenses were in that game. But it was definitely a good start to the Edric deck. So we'll move on to the next game. So I'll go ahead and keep this, and I'm playing against Gisa, and, well, let's go ahead and pause it for a moment. Nice little top deck there with the elf. I'm playing Gisa and Geralf. Okay, so let's him replay zombies from the graveyard. Not a big deal, hopefully. We'll see. So Aqueduct right there makes me happy since I've got opposition in hand. It makes it a lot easier to go ahead and potentially get this down. So now I have the potential right here to just go land, opposition, lock it down, so he plays on his turn Buried Alive. He puts Shieldred, Consecrated Sphinx, and garbage. So I figure the only land I really need to lock down is the Aqueducts here. So I go ahead and just attack with Edric only. And because I'm sitting on a bunch of counters, I actually think about not playing opposition, but then I decide that with Gilded Drake in my hand, I can go ahead and afford to allow him to potentially reanimate. Alright, so I go for another card here. I don't really need a lot of cards. I've already got everything I need to win the game. So I'm just taking free cards because I can take them. And I thought about killing Edric here, but I go ahead and kill Finhorn Elves. It's really academic at this point, I think. The right play probably was to kill Edric, only because the elves make extra mana next turn, and I'm not likely to be attacking next turn. I anticipate him having 3 elephants in a moment. But if I kill this guy, I can just replay him, whereas if I kill the Finhorn Elves, I cannot. However, uh, I think on it further and realize that because of opposition, getting Traston and giving him 3 elephants is weaker than just taking Drained Hermit, locking his entire board down, getting tons of mana off Gaia's Cradle potentially next turn, and also I have Edric, Drained Hermit, and no blockers is better than Edric, an Elephant, and 3 blockers. So I just do it this way. Then I don't have to, then I can use the Cradle to pay the upkeep here, and I don't have to try to figure out how to recast Edric. Um, and then I smash in with a few guys, draw some cards and stuff. So this combination of Drained Hermit and opposition is enough for this opponent. And he scoops. So next guy, Widespread Ruin. And he's got Janara, Art of War, and he gets to go first. And I have a Mishra's Workshop hand, which is very weird. You don't expect to see this in Edric. Maybe you shouldn't see it in Edric. I don't know. I'm definitely not saying this is the best way to build the deck by any means, but it is a way. It is a way to build the deck, and it does try to maximize abuse. So I go ahead and imprint a. Oh boy, really wish that my game would stop doing that. I go ahead and imprint a green card. I imprint Reclamation Sage, since I didn't expect my opponent to have a target here. And then I regrow a land so that I have an extra target for Garrick. Cast Edric, hit my opponent, draw a card, and then untap 2, and I've got a counterspell. So he did play an artifact. He played the Greaves, but that's okay. So down comes Janara. We're gonna go ahead and counter that, and then we get to clear out most of his. I top deck a Sword of Feast and Famine, which is amazing timing. Allows me to actually equip the sword, cast my Jiraga, Tree Speaker, attack with all my guys. Still haven't even used a land yet. And if I draw another artifact, I'll be able to play it off the workshop basically for free. I don't, but I'm able to do this. Trastodon, boom, boom, boom. My opponent draws and scoops it up. Had he not, with the Sword of Feast and Famine, I can continue to attack. Of course, I would move the sword to Trastodon, and then from there, I'm smashing him for 11. So he's dead in 3 at a minimum. I could have overrun with Garrick if he hadn't come in to do anything about it. I could have potentially done 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So I had 29 damage on the board showing. Probably time to scoop it up there after losing all that mana and getting locked into a situation where I wasn't going to get any cards, and I had double mana and all the good stuff that you saw there. Pretty much the best thing he could have done at that point, if he had been able to, is somehow maybe get down with some extra mana, remove the Trastodon, kill the Garrick, try to get back in the game, but he clearly did not have that. So next opponent is Anthrax and Cyanide over there. So I've got a okay hand. It's not great. He plays a 1/2 that does nothing relevant. It gets bigger when it attacks. So I just go ahead and curve into Boreal Druid and a map. He plays his commander, hits me for a few points of damage. No big deal. I go ahead and play Edric, and I chill out because I want to use the map, but I also may want to counter. Play some garbage flyer. So I mean, I'm obviously playing against some jank deck here, so I go ahead and just map it up for Gaia's Cradle, I believe, which is generally the target for map. Yep, and sack Verdant Catacombs and fetch myself an Arbor, which now produces extra mana thanks to the Gaia's Cradle. It essentially produces 2. And I level up Draga Tree Speaker, so now my elves all produce double green, including Edric. I go ahead and just trade him away because my opponent's because I can replay my guy no problem. He uses the trick of his commander where he targets it with a pump spell in order to make this thing get bigger, which I anticipated could happen, but who cares? I still get a card out of his hand. About to replay my commander as well as the Priest of Titania. I would have tapped green and was it going to play an island? Tap green and a couple for yeah, probably green and Boreal Druid. Play the priest and then tap Gaia's Cradle for 4 mana and a blue, and then cast my commander, and that leaves me with 4 mana left untapped. I could have then used 2 for one orb had I chosen. At any rate, although my opponent had the advantage in terms of the board, his guys were not going to get through on the ground too easily anymore, thanks to my 1/4, and so it was going to leave him with a Pegasus, and I don't think he just wanted to deal with it there. And he didn't even see my play yet, so I think he was probably ready to scoop, but who knows. That was a Mishra's Workshop draw in the Edric deck. So now I'm playing against, ooh, what is this? I think he's, Teneb the Harvester. And I've got a slightly sketchy keep. But I draw a Sylvan Ranger, which makes it really nice because now it's a lot less obvious. I don't have to telegraph that I didn't hit, that I didn't have a turn 2 land. And I'm just sitting there in a defensive posture. And I had planned to fabricate here into a and go get myself a crypt. But when I drew the natural order, I go ahead and just natural order and skip playing a land this turn. Trastodon, triple thump his lands. Hope he doesn't kill the Trastodon in response, and he does not. He does dig out a Blazing Archon, and I'm quite happy to be holding Fabricate here because now I can, if he puts that in play, I can copy it. Instead, he just plays a Bojuka Bog, so that's fine. So I could have fabricated for a Phyrexian Metamorph. So anyway, I go ahead and cast Edric on my turn. I'm sitting on a Bloom Tender, who can now tap for 2 for a mana leak. Because what I'm hoping to do is get him to where he plays 3 lands, use counters to keep him from doing anything relevant, and then I'm going to clone Terastodon. So he will do nothing relevant. I will do something elephant, is the plan. But I do have Shackles there, and so I decide, thanks to having drawn a forest and the way that my mana works out, to go ahead and just attack with Terastodon and see if I can get a card out of it. I do. He just cycles to get his third target, land in play. So I get his elephant. He's getting way out of control right now for him. Yeah, we get down Soul Ring. Soul Ring becomes Fabricate. Fabricate turns into Phyrexian Metamorph. I even have the luxury of paying full price for the Metamorph. I do it this way so that he can't kill my creature. Like, it's very hard for him to, there's no way for him to make a play here that I can't counter. Because if he draws a Strip Mine and plays a Strip Mine, then other than Mana Crypt, there's nothing else he could play, basically. So anyway, I go for triple elephant, and he scoops to that. He would have had 15 points of power on the board, but I'm sitting behind a counterspell. I've got double Terastodon, and I've got Shackles. So very hard for him to actually try to race this. In fact, impossible. And realizing that, my opponent gives in. So that was pretty nice there. That was BS 103. So I'm going to Burks BL. So I really like this version of Edric because it's I very much can play a control. It can play an Edric game, but it can play a control game as well, much better. So that in ways that prevent me from just auto losing to massive, like if it's a massive creature sweeper, I may be able to win with artifacts. If it's a massive artifact sweeper, I may be able to win with creatures. And as always, I can win with cards and mana. So my draw here is pretty slow, and I see that my opponent's got some very expensive lands, which gives me a good hope that my opponent's going to be a challenge of some sort. So I lead off with Edric, and I'm just chilling, hoping that I'm going to get a chance to get a sword hit in, and he plays this thing. There we go. It's got a Metalcraft that lets you equip for 0, and when equipment comes into play, you get to draw a card. So I was thinking, well, I might just put some equipment in play. It only happens if the controller of that plays the equipment. And then I top deck real nicely. I draw for the turn, rather, and I draw a Tezzeret, so I top deck a land there real nicely, so go ahead and just play Sower. And I was thinking for some reason that I actually had Metalcraft and I was going to move the sword over to the sower to protect it. Turns out I'm one short, but fortunately my opponent just does the perfect thing. He plays this useless god, which allows me to untap Mana Vault during my upkeep since I've got the Sword of Feast and Famine. And draw 3 cards and untap again all of my lands. So basically the sword untapped the Mana Vault, strangely. And then I find myself, I've got tons of mana. I didn't have to force Soul of Tezzeret, so yeah, this game's basically over. So we'll go ahead and fabricate into Gilded Lotus, and Lotus into a Mystic, and I was going to move the sword over, I think. Maybe I was going to play the script. I figured he's so far behind, I don't really actually have to win or orb here. I can probably just move the, I think I was going to move the sword to the sower. Because this, I have, oh no, I did play the Winter Orb, that's right. And then I was going to move the sword over to the sword for 0, using them, because I have Metalcraft now, so I moved the sword over, and then from there, there's just no way out, so I forgot I'd naturally drawn the Winter Orb, so yeah, fabricate into Gilded Lotus. So good. Gilded Lotus, quite possibly one of the best mana rocks in the game, even though it costs 5. Certainly in the format. So I'm playing against Captain Sisse, so I take a mulligan. I had a passable hand, I think, or maybe I didn't. It was either slow or without mana. Either one of those is no good against this commander, though. So the only difference being that slow is no good against anybody. So I go ahead and I get this Arbor Elf, and I think I'm doing okay, although I am missing a forest. Then my opponent gets Captain Sisse out early with a crypt, so I've got to adjust my play here. So I go ahead and just play Jace, bounce his Captain Sisse, and play Expedition Map. He sends me a message. I don't even want to click on it. I have no idea what his message was. I never actually looked. I have some kind of a glitch. If I bring up the message, like if I bring this up, so it sits in the corner up here, and then if I bring it up, it actually covers my whole screen. And if I close it after that, the game, anytime I search my library, I can't actually see my library. So it's the weirdest thing. But if I close the chat log, I can no longer search my library, and if I bring the chat log up, I can't close it without actually closing the whole thing. Like I can't minimize it or anything. So it's insane. So I never look at the chat log, no matter how bad I want to, because bottom line is I have to completely log out and log in. So he, on his turn, he just plays like Wall of Blossoms and recast Captain Sisse, and then on my turn, I bounce this guy, and I'm getting ready to make some further plays when he just goes ahead and concedes, which was interesting. I was going to cast Edric here, and then I was going to attack with my 2 guys, and he would block 1, and I would draw a card, and I would have a Edric out to block Elvish Mystic. So I think it was slightly premature scoop, but Jace does tend to make you feel pretty bad, and I can understand why he gave in there, and maybe he was right to have done it. I don't know. So this guy's playing this commander who, whenever you cast an enchantment, let's see if I can bring it up a better way so it's easier to read. Is that going to zoom or no? Yeah. You get an experience counter, and you can spend 3 to make a creature, an enchantment whose power and toughness equal to the number of enchantments you have, or something like that. At any rate, I've got an okay draw. Because I have Force of Will, I'm able to lead off with Arbor, and then I go ahead and just Sylvan Ranger into a land, which allows me to then. So I go ahead and then I Gilded Drake. I top deck Mox Diamond, which isn't great here, but this deck has ways of drawing cards, so Mox Diamond will be useful soon enough. And then he goes for Underworld, and I think about forcing, but actually, like, he's not going to be able to really do a lot against me. So I go ahead and just Merchant Scroll and get my Edric out and say go. He's not going to be able to do a lot with Underground because it costs him a mana every turn, and he's drawing a card, but okay, I'm pause it. He's drawing an extra card per turn, but I can easily catch up and surpass his ability to draw extra cards without spending a mana every turn. So this is too slow to compete with Edric, so that's why I let it go. I'd rather just protect my win. So then on his turn, basically, he plays Seal of Cleansing, and I let that go as well because he might choose to kill my Crypt, but even if he did, I was just planning to Cyclonic Rift Gilded Drake and then hit him with a bunch of guys and play land and have Unified Will up. So that plan doesn't change at all with the seal, so I just let him have it. And then he foolishly lets me untap because he's worried about me taking 3 damage here, so that allows me to actually, and then he kills the crypt during my upkeep, which allows me to play Rift as an instant and saves me a little bit of mana for the turn, which is kind of nice. So I go ahead and just Rift his Drake back to my hand and get in there for 4 under the assumption that I will find a land here. I find much better than that. A land, a Chrome Mox, another land, which is amazing considering, remember, I've got Mox Diamond in my hand. Throw that away. And I'm actually 1 mana short of actually getting down with Lotus right there off of 1 land to start, which is pretty cool. My opponent tries to kill all creatures. Of course, I fetch a Trop in response, cast Unified Will. And the neat thing about Gilded Drake going back to my hand is that I can now force a will with it if I'd like. But my opponent has had enough there and gives in. So I was going to draw, was I going to draw the full 5? I probably was because I had the Chrome Mox and the Lotus. So draw 5, play land, 5 and 6, 11, 12 cards I would have had, plus my draw step, So play land, go to 11, Chrome Mox, 10, 9, play the Lotus, 8, and then play whatever, go to 7, and then probably regrow a counterspell if I needed to. So yeah, that game was well over. That was Pelibris. Panda 606 is playing Phoenix, God of Deception, so he's trying to mill me out. I have a little sketchy keep, but I decide that in his colors I'll take the risk. He's got a Felwar Stone, so I think about whether or not I should give him blue and decide that I'll probably just go ahead and risk it. I need to keep my development going, so. Because Wood Elves, I use Wood Elves here because first off, I know I want to get Tropical Island. Second, so I want to get it before I draw it, and then secondly, I wanted to get Wood Elves down because although this would have produced an extra mana on the next turn, this had the potential to attack and draw a card while producing a mana that it fetched. So for 2 reasons, I played the Wood Elves first, and then on my turn, so I ended up getting a Ancient Tomb and a Garrick while he plays Dreamborn Muse. So I have to each of us millstones the number of cards in our hand during our upkeep. So during my upkeep, I actually lost Rift, Lapse, Priest, Cradle, and Shackles. And then I play Garrick. I cast Tradewind Rider, and I go ahead and say go. So on his turn, he mills off Cryptghast, Enemy Dead, Swamp Swiftfoot Boots, and plays Undead Alchemist. So whenever a creature is put into my graveyard from my library, I exile it and give him a 2/2, which is insane. So if I had not played Tradewind Rider here, I lose the game probably. Fortunately, I did play Tradewind, so with Dreamborn Muse on the stack, I go ahead and just bounce this thing before he gets, let's see, how many zombies? Would have got none that time, so who knows? Maybe I'm overreacting, but seems a little scary to me. Anyway, I go ahead and just dump most of my hand into play. I've got he's in a pretty rough spot now. He only has 4 mana. He plays Sphinx's Tutelage. Whenever you draw a card, I start milling myself and repeat it potentially. Anyway, on my turn, I mill off for 1 because I only have Cavern of Souls, and from Dreamborn Muse, I mill off my mana drain. That really sucks. Decide I'm going to go ahead and pay for the Hermit, since I've got Garrick here to get more lands. And then I was trying to do the math, can I kill him with an overrun from Garrick? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 3 is 24. 25, 26, 27, 28. And then 8 more is 36. So I actually come out 3 damage short. So instead I play Simic Growth Chamber, pick up a Forest, I believe, untap these 2 lands because they'll actually produce lots of mana. Go ahead and play Edric, bounces Dreamborn Muse, who's kind of a problem for me, and smash for 5 and draw 5, hoping I'll just find a counterspell here, and then wrap this game up. I actually find mana, and a Mystical Tutor, which is pretty cool. So I don't Mystical Tutor because he's got so many mill effects. I want to time the tutor correctly. And he just plays Dreamborn Muse, and that's fine. So I charge Coalition Relic. There's a chance here that he'll mill off what I want to fetch. But then again, I might as well risk it. I could always fetch potentially Regrowth as well. So anyway, he mills off like Copy Artifact, Birthing Pod, Freyalise, and a few other cards. So I go ahead and Mystical after his Dreamborn Muse is resolved. And I just get Forbid. I could have got like Natural Order or something, but there's absolutely no reason to do that. I'm in total dominant control here. I go ahead and I've got Tradewind Rider. I'm going to use Tradewind for tempo. I don't need even more cards than the vast number of cards I'll be drawing every turn. So I'm just going to keep tempoing him out. He's never going to get in this game ever. And in a couple turns, he'll be dead. So with Forbid Lock revealed to my opponent, he goes ahead and gives up. So that was a Panda 606. All right. What do we do about that? Close it? Okay, Panda 606. And so now I'm playing against Andrew McDonald's, who is playing with... What commander are you playing with, sir? Yazova Dragonclaw, and I think, okay, well, this will be fun. Unfortunately, it's not fun, but it is an easy win. So my opponent just gives up. Kind of a weird situation. So what would you play second? So I play first turn Boreal Druid. So second turn I can tap the Druid for a Soul Ring, and then I'd really like to play Copy Artifact on it, but if I do that, I can't play Wood Elves. So I was figuring what I'd do is I'd tap the Druid for the Soul Ring and then tap for Wood Elves, and then I'm 1 mana short from Copy Artifact. So either way, not the greatest thing. But if I draw a land next turn, I could play both Wood Elves and Soul Ring, however, and Copy Artifact. However, I think if I drew a land next turn, the play was actually going to be land, Soul Ring, Tradewind, say go. And then on the following turn, then I play Copy Artifact on the Soul Ring, cast the Wood Elves, fetch a Arbor, and then from there start activating Tradewind. And so, kind of weird, but if I had drawn a land here, I would not have actually played any of this crazy ramp. I would have gone for Tradewind to set him up for the lock on the next turn. At which point, my opponent would be stuck on 3 mana or, having terrible time trying to develop. And then I start playing Edric, and things really get out of hand, and the game's over. But he just gave up, I guess, because I don't know. Don't know. No explanation for that one. No idea why he would start the game and quit. Anyway, next opponent, Boiliged. Anyway, Boiliged over there is playing a zombie. So he gets to go first. And my hand's a little sketchy. I probably should have let off with Strip Mine here. But then my opponent plays Magus of the Bazaar, and I think, well, that is truly bizarre. I suspect maybe this guy's probably not very good. When he plays Mystic Speculation with Buyback, I realize no probably about it. This opponent is not going to give me too much trouble. So I go ahead and play Edric there, and I might as well just slam an orb down immediately. And my opponent exploits his Bazaar guy with Sidisi's Faithful, probably the best use of that creature, and bounces the wrong creature on my side. He should have bounced Bloom Tender, but he bounces Edric, so I don't know how to explain it, but I'm happy with that. So I go to untap Cradle, hardcast the Edric again. If I can just untap both the Cradle, the Bloom Tender, and have Edric in play, I'll be in good shape, and that's finally what happens. So I go ahead and fetch, I believe, Arbor, since the Cradle will now produce 3 mana per turn. Play Chromatic Lantern, copy it, and from there, we are about 1 turn away from getting my opponent's scoop. He plays Cackling Counterpart, which allows him to make a copy of Sidisi's Faithful, which would then, he would exploit either itself or this, and then bounce another creature, which is pretty terrible overall, but since I could just score a ton of tempo here, I go ahead and just tap 2, rift it in response, and since this is a target creature you control, and not target creature, he won't even be able to copy one of my guys, so with the rift bouncing this and effectively countering this, basically rift acted as though I had played a 4 mana cryptic command that said counter target spell and return target permanent to your owner's hand. It's kind of about the same result for half the mana, and with that, my opponent scoops. Had he not, of course, I would have been able to play Natural Order. But what's interesting is I would not have Natural Order into Terastodon yet again. I would have Natural Ordered into Deranged Hermit, I think, because the Cradle suddenly becomes absolutely insane. And the way I would have done it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sack the Arbor, becomes a Deranged Hermit. Arbor does get guys everywhere. Tap the Cradle at that point, and it would tap for 5, 6, 7 mana. 2 to regrowth, 4 for Natural Order. Natural Order the Hermit away again, and go get a what are you called? Eternal Witness. The Witness would have got natural order yet again. I'd had one floating. I had claim up. It doesn't matter. Anyway, bottom line is my opponent was pretty hosed right there. But had he not given up, there would have been a pretty amazing turn coming. So here's Mydral Tribe. And I've got one of those hands that looks partially like Edric, but partially like something else. And whatever that other thing else is, I like it very much. So I go ahead and just play Priest of Titania. I do not strip mine immediately, thinking that I may need the mana. And then on my next turn, because my opponent does nothing, I go ahead and strip mine into a Gilded Lotus, which is insane. Plus, I have mana, thanks to the Lotus being usable immediately, and I use it to regrow strip mine. I strip mine him again. I then cast, I believe, Edric, which will allow Priest to tap for 2. I decide I'm going to go ahead and just attack instead. And with a little bit of mana I had floating left, I Mystical Tutor, and I tutor for Natural Order. So on this turn I smash for some damage and find these cards here. And I am able to cast Gilded Drake, stealing his bird since I'm already giving him some pretty severe mana problems. And then from there I play a land, cast Finhorn Elves. I've got exactly one colorless left. About to tap Gilded Lotus for triple green and cast Natural Order if I want to. But realizing that I actually could wait on that, I could sit on Memory Lapse and do that in a moment. I actually don't think I was going to Natural Order immediately, was I? You know what? I don't think I was, because here's the thing. If I Natural Order into Terastodon, I get like, one mountain, and maybe I kill one of mine or something. If I Natural Order into Deranged Hermit and I'm tapped out, all he has to do is go land, Pyroclasm, kill my entire team, and attack me for 3 while he's at it. So, if I just do nothing, he gets to do nothing. He has to start playing more mana. I wait till his third, then I Natural Order into Trastodon. Meanwhile, of course, I would have been drawing a ton of cards. Potentially. Well, I don't know. Gilded Drake's kind of in my way. But meanwhile, I just relax in that case. Like I said, do not much. Let him get his third mana. Probably Trastodon him at that point. I hadn't really thought it through too heavily, but neither had my opponent. What he decided was he didn't even want to see how I was going to kill him. He just wanted to give up, so that's fine. So I'm playing against Porphyros, and I've got a draw that does not look, decidedly looks un-Edric, but quite saucy. So I get to go first turn Lantern, second turn Lantern, Growth Chamber, Winter Orb. Pretty nice turn too. And my opponent untaps one land and says nope. He gives up, which is totally fine with me. So I was going to be able to play land. I could have tapped for 5 and cast Tezzeret the Seeker if I wanted to. I could have cast Jace, and I think what I was planning to do in this position was actually cast Jace, Brainstorm, and then Flooded Strand away the junk. So at any rate, that was a quick wrap. And now I'm playing against Whiskers St. Cloud, playing Malik. So I have a hand that's another one of those kind of mixed hands. It's got some Edric elements, some original Edric elements, and it's got some Auroral elements, I guess you could say. So I go for a Bloom Tender early, and he plays Arcane Denial. Such a bad card in a control deck. It's only good in tempo, like Edric, where the cards don't matter. You're going to draw more than they will. And even then, I'm not sure that it's good. It's certainly not a card I'm using. So I miss a land drop here, which was a big deal. Slows me down quite a bit. But I'm able to develop in a way that's quite reminiscent of a different deck. And then I go into Gilded Lotus again, and Winter Orb. And my opponent has a Brainstorm in response. He got down a Propaganda, which wisely thinking that it would be good against Edric, and it is. But my version is a lot more than just an aggro deck. So I go ahead and screw up royally here by casting Arbor, turning it sideways to attack, thinking that it attacked, and then finding out later that I hadn't paid 2 for Propaganda, so it didn't attack. And there was no message coming up saying, do you want to pay 2 or something like that. So anyway, next turn I play Karn. It's all better now. I go ahead and play Karn and exile the propaganda, because it's a bit of a pain. You don't really want to waste mana on it. Um, he goes for Ingot, Darksteel Ingot, and I think about hard countering it, but I decided I'm just going to remand and try to get him to spend even more mana. He does spend more mana, but this time he uses an Ingot, and I'm totally fine with that because I'm going to exile Karn to take his Ingot away, and then witness Karn right back into my hand and toss him back on the table. And then I'm going to exile his Lantern and attack and untap Arbor, Tropical Island, and Regular Island. And from there, I've got a counterspell, Forbid or Unified Will, and I'm in a great shape. I was also going to draw, as a side effect, 4 cards. The cool thing is I love Arbor Elf and Dryad Arbor and Sword of Feast and Famine with Edric, because you get to attack with all of with your land creature, and then you get to untap it and use it for mana as well, so you don't even have to make the decision about which one you want to do with it. Pretty cool. Extra cool when you're doing it under a Winter Orb. It's just actually semi-hilarious because you're beating them down with man lands under a Winter Orb and drawing cards and then using the lands for mana. Doesn't quite seem right, and that's the way I like it. So those are all my games that I thought you would enjoy seeing an old deck in a new flavor. Eldritch Evolution is a card that I have put in here and taken out, put in here and taken out. Do not know how I feel about it. I like the fact that you can play Edric and you can evolution directly into Deranged Hermit. I don't like the fact that there's no way to go from, like, we don't have a 6-drop, so there's no way to jump up to Terastodon. I do like casting it and getting a early Glenelendra. I think that's quite good, or an early Tradewind Rider, depending on where we're at exactly in the turn sequence. But overall, I don't know. I mean, you can also do stuff like just first turn, Elf, and then they go. The opponent plays Soul Ring, and then you just play land and Eldritch Evolution into Sage to kill their Soul Ring and set them back. And then on the next turn, when you play Edric and you attack, you can hopefully draw a card off of the Sage. It's okay, but I don't know. I I will put it in there if I find room. Brian had actually suggested taking it out, and I'm kind of with him on that. We both tested it, and the thing is, it just doesn't quite fit in this deck as well as it would where all the creatures are kind of redundant for the most part anyway. So it doesn't quite fit as well as it would in a deck like, say, green, black, blue, or green, blue, white, where you've got, like in green, blue, white, you can go fetch like Stoneforge and do some pretty amazing things. You could fetch in green, blue, black. You could fetch up. There's a lot of you could go and get an early Shadow Mage Infiltrator and immediately start drawing cards with that in a way that's difficult to stop. There's a few other things you can do in either of the colors. Mainly the problem is with this card, I think that the number one creature that we want to be able to play that we cannot play is Primeval Titan. So you just without that target, it's just, I don't know, it's just not as good. Being able to tutor into prime time would be huge. Being able to tutor from prime time into Terastodon would be huge. But with the way this is, I mean, I don't know. It could still be good, and we'll see. I'll keep an eye out on it. Meanwhile, I think out of all the new cards, one that stands out to me is Freyalise actually being in this deck. I think it might be right. So it replaced that Acidic Slime, and it is a little bit of a bummer that we can't Pod or Green Sun Zenith into Slime, but it's not a huge deal. And Freyalise has some really strong synergy with a lot of cards in the deck. Being a disenchant is reusable. Disenchant is excellent, but also producing elves means powering the Cradle, powering the Priest, powering Skullclamp, powering up Opposition. It fits on the curve fairly well for that. So it does all those things, plus the disenchant effect itself, plus the fact that you can get equipment going and get a Freyalise out, and even if they clear the board, you can just make a guy, equip it, and you're ready to get to work again pretty quickly with Freyalise. Of course, if you're able to do the -6, then that would probably be a pretty good thing as well. It doesn't take that long, so you could You could have 5 loyalty, jump up to 7, and then immediately say cast like a hermit and then draw like 6, 7, 8 cards or whatever. So it has a lot of potential, and I think for all those reasons it probably stays. What's not in here it's really hard. Is like I said earlier, it's tough not to play this card, but it's the one that makes a 1/1 whenever a elf is cast on either side of the board. It's 2 mana guy. Fraley's kind of is replacing that, and it's weird to replace a 2-drop with a 5-drop, but that thing is really good with Cradle, and of course it's really good with Clamp and Opposition, but and maybe it will make the cut back in the deck at some point, but it doesn't really. It's not a good top deck. It doesn't stand alone. Fraley's at least as a top deck, provided you have the mana to cast, it's a little bit better. So yeah, I don't know. This is the build. Reclamation Sade's a card that's just insane. I wanted to run the 3 mana. It's a 3 mana 1/1 who it gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you draw a card, and then when it dies, you get a bunch of island walking guys. It's pretty good, but here's the thing: every creature in this deck, every card in this deck, just about either draws cards, makes mana, or disrupts my opponent in some fashion. Even if it's virtual card drawing, such as Snapcaster or Crucible, there's really nothing here that doesn't do anything like that. Anything else. Pod is kind of virtual card drawing in a way. As soon as you pod into a creature with a come into play ability, you see what I mean, or you pod away a Glenelender or something. Anyway, so there's nothing that doesn't do that, and the problem with the little 1/1 guy I was describing is that he doesn't make mana on his own. To make mana with him, you need to have his body to go with a priest, or he needs to go with a cradle, or something like that. So I kind of like Fraley's a little better because the creatures it puts into play are Llanowar elves basically, and so it's a mana producing card. It works as a mana producing card as well, and you could quickly go from Fraley's to a couple of these big end cards at the end there. So I don't know, seems a little better. But let me know what you think. I hope you've enjoyed these games. It's been a very, very long time since I played Edric. The deck's amazing, and I do finally have 2 decks that I can play with. I can play with Edric and I can play with Zur. So I'll go back to playing Zur a little bit later when I start getting the mood. But for now, I'll probably be playing this for a bit. And then when it comes to Zur, I may make some changes to that as well. I'm thinking about making changes. I need to wait for payday. So it'll be a little while before I can make any adjustments to really either of these decks, but they will continue to improve over time, and I hope you'll enjoy that. So thank you for watching. It's been a long time since I've played this much Commander, and hopefully you're looking forward to more, because that is my plan. I'll see you next time.